Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2008 Marvel film Iron Man. The film is directed by Jon Favreau and it stars Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, Terence Howard, Jeff Bridges, as well as Clark Gregg and Paul Bettany. Now, the film focuses on Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Tony Stark, who is a genius. He is like the darling of America. He makes all the weapons. He's been a genius since he was a boy. He's revered for his weapon design, so on and so forth. And while doing a weapons demonstration in Afghanistan, he is taken hostage by a terrorist cell, and they order him to make them his most recent weapon of destruction. He, in secret, in actual fact, designs himself a metal suit in order to escape. Once he gets back to civilization, he realizes that his legacy is not what he thought, and the weapons that he was creating are actually ending up in the wrong hands. So he decides to fight back and designs Iron Man. Right, what are my thoughts on Iron Man? Well, I thought after reviewing recently on the channel the 3 Blade films, I thought I would dip my toes into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, I have reviewed a number of Marvel films on this channel, ever since this channel's been going since about 2016-ish. Every time a Marvel film's come out, for the most part, I have reviewed them on the channel. This is me kind of revisiting some of the earlier Marvel films from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And of course, Iron Man is the first. It's the first self-financed film from Marvel. Before this, obviously, with any Marvel film that came out before this, it had the Marvel logo, but it was, funded and financed by movie studios and stuff. This was the first financed film by Marvel, and they took a huge risk. Now, Iron Man, now it might seem strange, but at the time when this, was being put together, Iron Man was nowhere near as well known as, like, your Spider-Mans and your Batmans and your Supermans and all the other kind of superheroes that we'd seen on the screen before, even Blade and the X-Men, so on and so forth. So they took a huge risk here. Now, to comic book purists, and I don't class myself as a comic book purist, but when I was younger, Iron Man was right up there as my favourite. I used to collect Iron Man comics as well as Spider-Man. When I was a youngster, I was a huge fan of Iron Man. So I was stupidly excited, knowing that we were going to be getting an Iron Man film, but also nervous. I mean, how were they going to make this work? How were they going to put Iron Man on the big screen? Well, what they did was, in actual fact, blow us away. I think Iron Man is one of the finest examples of a superhero origin story that you're ever likely to see. And it's a miracle how this worked. It was lightning in a bottle. The casting of Robert Downey Jr. It's one of those moments in cinema that you cannot envisage anybody else playing this character. You just can't. Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark. He is Iron Man. He embodies the role. He owns the role. He is remarkable. And every single time you see him as Tony Stark, not just in this film, but every time he returns to do his performance in the other films, it's the best thing on screen for me, Robert Downey Jr. And obviously they took a huge risk with Robert Downey Jr. because while he was, you could argue, on a little bit of a comeback trail before he got cast in this. He'd done Zodiac, and he'd done Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which was very well received, and things like that. It was a huge risk, especially when you consider all the top names that were being linked to the part. And here are some of the names that were linked to the part of being to being Tony Stark. We had Hugh Jackman, Clive Owen, Sam Rockwell, which is ironic because he returned up in Iron Man 2, Nicolas Cage, and Tom Cruise. And if you look around, there's many images online of Tom Cruise, not dressing up but you can see like images of what he would have looked like as Iron Man, and that potentially could have worked as well. But still, You cannot see past Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. It is remarkable casting that just worked in every way possible. Um, Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, fantastic. The chemistry between her and Robert Downey Jr. is really, really fabulous. And Jeff Bridges, one of my favourite actors, being cast as Obadiah Stane. His seemingly his mentor and partner sort of thing in the business, who turns out to be, spoiler guys, the big bad in the film. Now, the film has received a bit of criticism, and a lot of Marvel films have received a lot of criticism over the years for their lack of strong villains. And this is one of those movies where they do say that, the villain's not very strong. I actually disagree with that. I actually think Jeff Bridges, Obadiah Stane, is a fine villain in this film, with one of the best scenes in the film, when they're trying to recreate the piece of technology that Tony Stark puts in his chest to stop him from dying. That he creates, like, basically in a cave with no resources at all, and they can't recreate that technology at a larger scale at the factory. And he goes absolutely ballistic with the scientists, reminding them of how Tony Stark created that, invented that piece of technology, and where he was. It's just a brilliant, brilliant scene, with lines delivered by a brilliant, brilliant actor in Jeff Bridges. The one thing I think that you could argue doesn't work in here, and they did set that right in the sequel and beyond, is Rhodey, played by Terence Howard here. He never truly looks comfortable in the role here. There's very little chemistry between him and Robert Downey Jr. And while I'm not exactly sure why they recast the role, I don't know if he was offered to come back or if they realised it wasn't working, but they made the right call by replacing him in the follow-up films for the Iron Man movies and the Avengers movies and beyond. So it's just such a fabulous film. The whole sequence, how it's set up. I mean, when you turn on the film and it introduces you to the character Tony Stark, it's perfection. It gives you his whole backstory, who his father is, this child prodigy, this genius who's running the company at the age of 21. You within the first 5 minutes of watching this film, you understand who Tony Stark is and what he does, and it's just brilliant. And then you learn very, very quickly that he's a playboy. He doesn't take things seriously, and then you get that absolutely brilliant sequence, obviously at the beginning of the film, where he gets taken hostage by the terrorist cell, and then the whole bit at the beginning where he's in the cave and he's building the Iron Man suit kind of in secret to kind of make his escape. That whole thing is just brilliant, because you see this arc for Tony Stark in that cave. You see him really turn into a man when he truly understands that his legacy is not what he thought, and he kind of learns all this in this cave, and then just the badassery of Mark 1 suit. It's absolutely fantastic how they do it, and all the effects that they put in this film to actually convince us that the Iron Man suit is real. When he gets back to the US, he starts designing and creating this Iron Man suit and taking it for test flights and things. It's just so brilliantly done, and you completely buy it. The flying sequences are done so brilliantly, and the way they film it kind of inside the helmet, so that you still feel that Robert Downey Jr. is that character. It's not just a piece of CGI flying through the sky, because you're constantly getting Robert Downey Jr. talking to Jarvis. I mean, that in itself was a stroke of genius, because it keeps you immersed in the moment, in the scene. And so some great action as well. The action where he breaks out of the cave at the beginning is fabulous. The action where he goes and takes out the terrorists is fabulous. The fight scenes between him and Obadiah Stane at the end of the film, I really quite enjoy. I think it's really, really good. And just the whole sequences with him inventing and creating the suit, and some of the comedy involved in it as well. There's very, very few faults I can give you this film. I do genuinely think it's one of those superhero films that just completely and utterly nails everything it tried to do. And it is miraculous because it was a troubled shoot in many ways because they didn't have a finished script when they started, which was very frustrating for the likes of Jeff Bridges because he likes to be prepared as an actor. And then he kind of came to terms with the fact that, okay, they're making this up as they go. So a lot of the lines they made up on the day. They ad-libbed a lot or they rewrote scenes on the day. It was like, you know, it was like a student film in many ways, how it was being made, and it was probably quite fresh and exciting set to be on, you know what I mean, because they were creating something special. And when you think how far the Marvel Cinematic Universe has come, yes, you could argue now it's kind of got to the point now where I think it's burnt out. I think not many of us would argue with that. Occasionally they'll still give us a good Guardians of the Galaxy film or a good Spider-Man film, but beyond that, it's faltering massively. That's just my opinion. But when you look at the quality of some of the earlier Marvel films, well, they're just outstanding. And I think Iron Man is right up there for me as the best Marvel Cinematic Universe films. Certainly for me, probably in the top 5. It's just almost perfection in every way. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts on Iron Man are. Let me know which Marvel Cinematic Universe film you'd like me to revisit next. I might actually, unless I'm convinced otherwise, I might just do Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3 and then move on to some others sort of thing, kind of keep them in sequence like that. Or I could do it in the sequence in which they were released. But like I say, I'm not going to do all of them because I have reviewed quite a number of them already on the channel. But yeah, let me know in the comments your thoughts. And I will, of course, be back with plenty more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.